Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Elders Climate Action September National Call. I'm Frances Stewart, a volunteer with Elders Climate Action and chair of the Education Committee. I'm grateful for the opportunity to moderate today's call with our renowned guest, Dan French, who I will introduce in a little bit. For those of you who are new to Elders Climate Action or who may not have heard about us, we always like to say that we are great uncles and great aunts, grandparents, and everyday folks who are determined to do all we can to leave a livable planet for future generations and all life. Our programs, communications, and chapters are focused on engaging elders in building the personal and political will needed to respond to the climate crisis. At ECA, we are elder-centered and volunteer-driven, seeking to inform, inspire, engage, and encourage older generations to take action on the climate crisis at the local, state, and national levels. After Dan's presentation, we will take questions and then have an action party with Climate Action Now. And now for the man of the hour. Dan French, a visionary economist, strategist, and former attorney at the forefront of today's rapid evolution in our energy economy and in built and natural environments, joins Elders Climate Action to answer some of our biggest questions about agrovoltaics. Dan is here to address the questions: is America on the precipice of disaster and systemic collapse, or on the doorstep of abundance and ultra energy and economic independence, or both? Join us for a sweeping view of the big picture, humanity's biggest problems, and how we have the answers in hand and are already well on our way to building a new era of sustained superabundance, but could still blow it. Dan, please take it away.
Wow, thanks, Francis. Appreciate the invitation and the group's interest. Good evening. I'm going to make full use of the time today. We're going to go really fast. I've got a lot of slides with hopefully not too many words to answer, some of these big questions. I appreciate whoever wrote that. We could have called it energy abundance or planetary bust. We're going to get there by trying to answer the energy and agriculture crises now facing, America and indeed the world. There's actually 4 crises we'll get to. But Dan French, short bio, I'm less important. I'm actually quite shy. I'm kind of a ghost strategist. I work for a lot of others. But we do a lot of different things. We do the Virginia Solar Summit coming up in April. I'll get right to that. We do the Solar Farm Summit, just had that. North American Agrovoltaics Awards, all kinds of different things. I like to be on the kind of bleeding edge of the Renaissance. Let's see if I can advance my slides. Yes. This is the only thing I got to sell you tonight. No book, nothing like that. But we do have a little company that produces some conferences, including the Virginia Solar Summit, which has been hosted by the Virginia Department of Energy, not too far away from many of y'all I know are in Maryland. But coming up this spring, we'll have a new governor, and Virginia, for all kinds of reasons, is at the forefront of this nexus of energy and environment and economy. And I'm going to use Virginia a little bit as a proxy as we go. Here's today's roadmap. That's the Virginia Solar Summit logo, show all about agrivoltaics. But we'll do the planetary emergency, then the energy emergency, rural emergency, agricultural emergency, and then finally get into some agrivoltaics answers. And maybe, hopefully, get to look ahead to maybe this new recipe for difference-making local adaptation. Maybe it's too late for climate. What can we do about it? Let's begin at the very beginning. When I was an attorney, I was in-house at BP when we blew up the Gulf of Mexico. Sorry about that. Trying to make amends still. The world is a brownfield, I learned. It's a dirty business to keep 8 billion people going on the planet today. And we really took a turn in the Industrial Revolution. So 3 centuries now of ever intensifying industrial scale activity has degraded the entire Earth's physical conditions, really in ways we can't calculate. So we do the ice core samples in the Arctic, and we find Roman pollution from smelting in the Roman era. So we've been at this quite a long time, and it did begin at the very beginning. The Fertile Crescent, the cradle of civilization. I know everybody learned about this in school. It was the world's first brownfield. We invented agriculture there, but those simple dikes trapped salt behind the dikes, and 90% of rainfall in drylands evaporates right back into the atmosphere. And so over the centuries, the salinity of the soils in ancient Mesopotamia piled up until we couldn't grow wheat anymore. They traded down to barley. And then the Bible kind of picks up from there. Ancient Sumer collapsed. This is what it looks like today. This is Idlib, Syria. You can see some of the sheep and the goats there in the background. Precious little fresh water in the cradle of civilization. And most of this we did with, again, those simple dike systems. Here's a few years ago, plagued by dust storms. So this is what it looks like from space, thanks to our friends at NASA. April 7 on the left, April 9, just days and days of dust storms in the cradle of civilization. Desertification, not a new story, especially to the elders in the human tribe. Lake Chad down 90% since I've been alive. Not a new story, right? Desertification in Africa. Farm Aid was just this weekend in Minnesota, but Live Aid goes way back in 85. Of course, by 87, the famine was back again. And we have not solved this problem. So the Horn of Africa is just plagued by drought and famine, almost on a loop. And you can see it was back very intensely in 2011, and again, even more recently in 2022, and even more recently. But it's not just an African story or a Middle Eastern story. We've got desertification in Asia. That's Uzbekistan, the Aral Sea. And of course, throwing it way back to the American Dust Bowl. So Americans are not unfamiliar with this problem. A kind of a combination of perfect storm of environmental conditions and bad policy and boom times led up to Black Sunday. And we're all familiar, I think, with the aftermath, truly devastating, almost unimaginable environmental catastrophe at scale within the living memory of some today. And we reacted quite robustly, right? We created the Soil Erosion Service, now the NRCS. That's Dr. Hugh Hammond Bennett there on the left. Kind of came at a decent time, had to put a lot of people to work, and we did. Won't recall all of your 7th grade history class. But again, we have not solved this problem in the United States. So I did most of my growing up in Illinois, bouncing around a lot. As a kid, in 2023, we had a particularly dry summer, and we had a flash drought. And on I-55 South, Springfield there, we had a mini dust bowl. And blackout conditions on the highway. There was a car pileup and 7 people were killed and over 100 injured, I think. So it may be 2025 and the AI robots are about to take over and kill us all. But if it doesn't rain at the right time, people are still dying on planet Earth, even here in the United States. And just to leave no doubt at all, not blaming farmers. I'm a farm kid. I skipped my bio slide. I'm glad I did that. Not a farmer, but I grew up on and around farms. And again, it's not our fault. We got to feed the world. But again, just the rains didn't come at the wrong time, and the winds blew and people died. And it was right back. This is near Chicagoland, New Lenox, where my auntie lives actually today, May 16, 2025. We had Chicago's first ever flash dust bowl. You may be familiar with the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, showing very recent drying all over the world. So it's not just our atmosphere where we have problems. The world is a brownfield, it's polluted, and then our seas too, which I won't get to. But soil and the continents themselves are very much in trouble. We're drying out and dying out. So this is that same UN Aridity Index, a different kind of AI. Looking at the distribution of these drying lands, and 40% at this time. This report's a little bit older. 40.6% of the planet was considered dry land, but you maybe have seen this, or this was last summer actually. This report published in Science, where maybe we've gotten up just since then, in the last decade, up to 45% of global land maybe comprised of dry lands, desertifying lands. And then shout out, this is brand new. Thanks to my team for helping me pull this together. You might have seen this on PBS in recent days. This new published research article from Arizona State University. Again, I encourage you to pull this and go find this. There's some great just clips on YouTube that you can find if you try. It's not very hard to try. Showing just the profound global impacts that water availability, water scarcity is having on everything from agriculture to indeed terrorism. So the world is a brownfield. It's polluted. We've been polluting it. What do they say? I'm not here to speak about this, but more plastic in the ocean than fish by 2060 or something like that. But more importantly, and this is where I've spent most of my life's work, in addition to the brownfields, is the deserts, desertification. Whatever the reasons, wherever it's happening, the deserts are winning. If we dry out, we die out. And it's happening all over the world. It is a climate story, though. I love this article from Forbes, not just because it's a girl in a bikini, but soil science is very sexy. Why? Because the soil has more carbon in it than all the plants and animals on the earth itself. 3x. So 560 gigatons. If we're serious about carbon, we can get a lot of good work done focusing on soils. Okay, that was our planetary emergency, and I am going to go fast today. Hopefully, leave time for questions. The energy emergency. President Trump on day one declaring a national energy emergency. There it is, the executive order. What's it all about? Prices. Right, prices are way up. During the pandemic, prices really exploded. American consumers, even adjusted for inflation, have never paid more for electricity than we have in recent years. Prices have backed off a little bit, especially those wholesale prices, which you can see here. Ooh, we should have updated this. This is a little out of date, but a good year look. But residential prices, unfortunately, are quite sticky. We're getting up there, but it depends on where you live, right? Those wholesale prices. We have a somewhat fragmented grid system in the United States, so where you are is what you'll pay. And I'm going to use Virginia now, but anybody can go find their state in the U.S. Energy Atlas. And you can see the mix here. You can click around on this. This is a live map if you go to the website. And you can see Virginia is really, it's predominantly a natural gas powered state. I think it's maybe 1 or 2 in nuclear. Illinois is another state that's got a lot of nuclear. And then solar, coal, wind make up the rest. Solar has been on its way up, but coal is on its way out. A lot of it replaced with natural gas. And you can see that. So if you're rooting for less emissions, that's been a part of the natural gas story. You may not like how they're fracking the gas and potentially contaminating the groundwater or the extra methane, but it has brought emissions down as we kind of traded for coal. It hasn't been solar and wind and batteries that killed coal in the last 15 years. It was natural gas. And so again, it depends on who you are and what you'll pay, right? So cities, residential, commercial, industrial, everybody kind of has slightly different rates. And here's just another look at that mix, almost 5,000 megawatt hours of natural gas fired power in Virginia. But Virginia doesn't have much of its own natural gas. This is it's kind of recent history. Most of it is coal bed methane. It has some, but it's in terminal decline. So Virginia is importing its natural gas from its neighbors to power those burners, and we've been able to do that, as I'm sure this audience is aware, because we've had the biggest oil and gas boom of all time in the last 15 years, bigger than the Saudis in the 60s. And this is what it looks like from space. Out there in the Dakotas, the Bakken Formation. We almost immediately became a net natural gas exporter, the United States. And we had, again, this was a projection. This is from Bloomberg back in the day, in year 7 of the boom. And we thought we might be able to get up to 9 million barrels a day by this year, by 2025. But the real numbers by 2023, we almost hit 13 million. And today we'll probably hit, this year we've hit 13.5 million barrels a day. So truly the biggest oil and gas boom of all time. Right alongside is the demand boom. I know everybody knows about NVIDIA, these damn NVIDIA chips taking over the world, but the electrification of everything has begun really by this guy and the grid. But there's Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA. The old chips, the new ones pull, I think, almost a kilowatt, but the last generation pulls 700 watts per chip. 700 watts. That is more than an average US home per chip. And these big data centers have 100,000 chips maybe. So we're looking at absolutely shocking, unbelievable demand growth. Really not out of the blue, but all professionals have been revising their forecasts up big time because of what you see on the left. That's what it looks like, racks and racks of chips. And you can see FERC's forecasts over there on the right. Virginia, home of data centers, the data center capital of the world. Northern Virginia, you'll see at the top, more than China, but notice about halfway down, Southern Virginia makes the list all on its own. So Virginia really is the beating heart of the digital economy, although there's data centers being built everywhere now. They cluster. So here you can see this is from a JLARC report, and I'll flash this just kind of quickly. We've built a lot. We're number 1, but there's a lot in the queue. So this is, applications under construction, zoned but not built. We got millions and millions and millions of more square feet of data centers that are coming in the queue. This is a view from Dominion Energy, one of the two utilities in Virginia. And you can see this is from their quarterly report and their revision forecast, almost doubling. Some of this is paperwork, some of this is calling forward future demand. But so many folks are trying to get into the queue so quickly. This is how Dominion is reporting it to their shareholders. 40.2 gigawatts of demand versus 21.4 just 6 months ago in July. So again, here's that JLARC report, legislative action out of the state of Virginia, looking at future scenarios, and you can see that top line, unconstrained demand. So if we just have this continued runaway data center development, we could see a trebling of electricity demand in Virginia by 2040. So that's big time. For all y'all that are really news hounds or following the technology, you might say, oh, but Dan, what about DeepSeek? What about conservation? Surely these data guys, if electricity prices explode, they're going to use less. And isn't technology using less electricity all the time? Yes, that is true. I think conservation has really been a big story, really since the 70s. There's been a lot of incredible electricity saving technology that has come online, better light bulbs, all kinds of things. And we don't have time to get too esoteric on this, the history of the industrial renaissance, but this shift to electrons, you can hear Wall Street analysts talking about it and finding it in research reports, a shift from molecules to electrons. And that kind of fits within this larger sweep of history, from animals to machinery to molecules to electrons. Electrons just work better. There's just less friction. So even at the atomic level, and we've been at electricity so long, we're getting smarter in how to use it. So even many of our large industrial facilities are using lots and lots of electrons, whereas they were using oil, coal, or gas in previous generations. All right. So the next phase of the global energy game looks a lot different. Wars for oil, blood for oil. But maybe it's natural gas is taking the place of crude oil. President Trump is negotiating all these trade deals, I'm sure you've seen, and a lot of folks are lining up to get our natural gas that the fracking boom has brought online. Here you can see Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba from Japan, one of many, from Europe, from elsewhere, because we have some of the cheapest natural gas in the world. So here we are right now. That's from this past week. We'll get another report this week. So about $3, but it used to be about $2. And we've seen some big winter spikes, of course, in natural gas. So brace yourselves this winter. We're kind of coming into a higher base. We'll see. But the big incentive for Prime Minister Ishiba and the rest of the natural gas universe on planet Earth is, like we've had a fragmented grid, we've had a very fragmented natural gas global market. Until recent years, it was impossible. You needed a pipeline. But thanks to liquefied natural gas technology, where they supercool it and turn the natural gas into a liquid and put it on huge ships, ship it overseas. Now we're doing that at scale, and I'll get into some of that, but we're going to take our super cheap natural gas, which you can see on the screen there, to global markets, which may be triple the price. So the Chinese are paying triple for natural gas, and that creates a huge economic incentive to export our cheap supplies to global markets. I mentioned previously that as soon as we kind of flipped the switch, we became a net natural gas exporter. Since then, you can see on the screen, we've added tremendous LNG export capacity in recent years. The United States is now the world's largest exporter of natural gas, as you can see. The largest customer is China. Quite a different story than when I grew up and was watching Mad Max. Here you can see all in, so not just liquefied natural gas on those ships, but pipelines. We have surpassed Russia. And that's the bad news for our comrade friends. This was their game for most of our lives. Do what we say or we turn off the gas. Yeah, well, that's over, or it's ending. And the United States is playing a big part of that. Again, whatever we think about carbon in this last boom, it has huge geopolitical consequences. hopefully as a bridge to our very bright future. From where we are, this is more LNG export capacity in the queue. So not permits, which we can go find, but projects under construction. The United States is set to double its existing export capacity, and this is what the C-suites and planners are working backwards from. So that's the export story. Maybe the price is going up. It's also, though, getting more expensive to build natural gas. This is NextEra CEO John Ketchum. He was at CERAWeek earlier this year and just pointing out that as recently as 2022, they were building their gas-fired power plants for about $785 a kilowatt. If we want to do that today, it's more like $2,400. And more than that, you're going to have to get in line because everybody's already queued up. This natural gas story is maturing. Everybody has built out this capacity. And so now if you want to put in your order today, you can expect delivery in the 2030s at the earliest. Wow. So that's quite a pinch. What else can we do? Well, we can do all kinds of things, as I'm sure as this group knows. We've got other technologies: solar, wind, nuclear. We need voltage lines to move it around, and depending on who you are, where you are, you can kind of build these things faster. Of course, China is building the fastest, as you can see. Nuclear, we're hearing a lot about this. Virginia's permitted a fusion facility, which may be coming online again, probably in the 2030s. We could be building a more conventional nuclear, and some folks are trying, but it's very expensive and there are delays, as you can see on the screen. So that's why investors have really drawn this green box around these solar, wind, and battery combo systems. They're cheaper to deploy. You can do it at scale. It pencils out. We're not waiting. We need power right now. And that's what we can do. So no surprise, in recent years, batteries and solar in particular have absolutely dominated investment and capacity additions to the grid. As you can see, almost all solar and batteries, with a little bit of wind, some nuclear, and just a little bit of natural gas. This is from Bloomberg NEF, the most recent levelized cost of energy, and we can just see across these renewable categories, the technologies continue to get cheaper. Even fixed access PV, which has been around for quite a while, is falling at 2%. Offshore wind, a less mature industry, we're seeing double-digit declines year over year, probably with a lot further to go. And here's just another look at it again as solar tech continues to improve, probably many more improvements yet to come. Module efficiency goes up and the price comes down. So the economics have really taken over. Policy has helped. The IRA was passed. It's recently been repealed with the BBB, but we already have, and some of these facilities will be canceled, but we've got about enough solar panel manufacturing in the United States to meet current demand. So the manufacturing story is kind of snuck in right at the very end. One of our terawatt sponsors, we were thrilled to introduce Solarix. Virginia is going to have its own panel manufacturer here pretty soon. Won't linger on that, and right on time, because Virginia has become the #1 electricity importing state in the United States, surpassing even California. There it is. Thank you, Pennsylvania. We appreciate all the electrons. Please keep sending them. But it's not quite enough. And right before the last Virginia Solar Summit in this past spring, Dominion raised the base rate for the first time since 1992. And you would think we'd be getting after it and building everything that we can, but not so much. NIMBYism is on the rise. And last year, 2024, for the first time, more than 50% of utility scale projects in Virginia did not go through. So they were either rejected or withdrawn. So Shaquille O'Neal is shooting better free throws than solar developers, large scale solar developers in Virginia. Merrick Action is a group. You can find some of their work, including this lovely chart showing Virginia's patchwork of solar ordinances, including a lot of moratoriums. Counties have just said, no thanks. We don't want solar. And so I won't read all this, but basically in the last 18 months, and this is a little out of date now, but there were 33 utility scale solar denials with a capacity of about 3.2 megawatts, 3,000 megawatts. Not the case everywhere. NIMBYism is not necessarily on the rise in Texas, where they have a totally different legal regime, of course. Texas is going to build 11.5 gigawatts this year, 30% more than they did in 2024. Indiana, another red state, catching up right behind. So quickly off my head, 3.2 in Virginia. It looks like Texas will almost do triple what Virginia has rejected in the last 18 months. So they're ironically, they're going different directions maybe. The bigger threat at this moment in time is NIMBYism, is to maybe go one worse, and that's to go bananas, to build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone. It's not just getting harder to permit solar, wind, or batteries. Try building a pipeline or a transmission line or data center or anything. The entire global economy is undergoing a tremendous transition and renaissance, and the United States is stuck in the starting blocks. That's a little commentary from me. All right. I know I'm sensitive to the time, and sorry for the blitz, but they asked for the full brief. All right, rural emergency. Let's zero in a little bit. America is distressed. This is something called the Distressed Communities Index, and you can go find this. It's updated regularly. It crunches a lot of different data, and here you can see kind of the distribution of despair. And what I'd like to point out is that only a quarter of the jobs created since the Great Recession were available in the bottom 60% of zip codes. So it's a tale of two cities in the United States, or two counties at least, where density, urban places have taken the lion's share of the jobs and left less for everyone else. If you're in a distressed community, you've had net zero business establishment, net zero employment gains since the dot-com crash, since the year 2000. Which is rather shocking and amazing. And if you're thinking, oh, this is flyover territory, not very dense, nobody cares. Actually, no. There's almost, you can see on screen, 114.4 million Americans living in a distressed community or an at-risk community. So about a third of America. And we don't have it on the screen, but if you're in a distressed community, there it is. I'm sorry, I didn't read the bottom bullet. Your life expectancy is less. 5 years at least. It's looking more like 10 years in some of the most recent research. Lots of reasons why we can't get into on our fast pace tonight, but America's rusty. We're familiar with this story. EPA's been at this a long time. It's a bipartisan thing, 99-0 in the Senate, the brownfield redevelopment program, but we still got about 500,000 and nobody's really sure. A lot of those old 1 and 2 factory towns, they're down to 1 or none with a big polluted brownfield. Won't mention this. America is very sick, especially relative to the rest of the world. Cancer clusters. Deaths of despair. This is a geographic distribution of this, but this is actually out of some joint congressional research. You can find this. It's a body of work. And unfortunately, suicides today are at generational highs. You got to go all the way back to the peak anxiety of World War II in 1941 to find more suicides than you find today. Here you can see it broken out by demographic, and just something is different. Something is happening around the year 2000. Look at our young people. There's always a divide between rural and urban life expectancy, but the suicide rate in rural areas, again, in distressed communities, seems to be getting worse, as you can kind of track optically from left to right to the bottom. And there it is, all in. And you can kind of see rural breaking higher in the wrong way. And this is not the kind of American exceptionalism I like to see. Our life expectancy breaking away from the rest of the OECD. That's the developed world. Here's just kind of another look at it versus G7 on the left, the most developed nations. But I'll call your attention on the right. It's actually white folks who are leading mortality from unintentional drug overdoses. So young folks, white folks, rural folks, urban folks, all folks in the United States are suffering. And it's not a race, it's not a competition, but I would also just like to point out that the Chinese now have a lot longer life expectancy than the United States. What's happened during the pandemic, they turned, and in my lifetime, life expectancy in China has doubled. So we've got problems. It's a lot of my life's work. We don't have time to get into all this either, but there's all kinds of troubleshooting that needs to be done in rural America and urban America, to be frank. It's a lot of these different issues, kind of the laundry list of terribles right here. It's no community suffers them all, but we can kind of mix and match these things, and we need real answers, and we're still waiting to make some of these things happen, whether it's just food deserts, affordable housing, or resource depletion, brownfields and pollution, electricity, and so on. All right, so zooming in a little bit on the rural emergency. Let's shift to the ag emergency. We've got a lot of good data here. This is from the USDA Ag Census, comes out every 5 years. You got to go back to Abraham. We're losing farms every year, and you got to go back to basically Abraham Lincoln to find more people farming than today, less than 2 million now. So a 10% decrease from in just a decade. And it seems to be getting worse. This has happened though while per capita food spending has reached an all-time high. So people are spending more on food than ever, but we're having a perpetual crisis in our agricultural communities. Even food away from home. You know, inflation's real, but people are spending on food. What's happening? Farmers are kind of trapped by success, right? We're producing more, and we have essentially the most productive human beings that have ever existed working in the field today. Thank our lucky stars, because food deserts and impoverishment would be way worse. But even though population has exploded, we've seen net deflation in agricultural prices. So that's what's really happening. Productivity has saved us, been a lot of technology, a lot of reasons why beyond the scope of this call. Thankfully, inputs have held flat because those prices have exploded. This is another problem, the food dollar, the farmer's share of the food dollar. It depends on what you buy, but farmers just aren't getting much. It's kind of lost in the global food vending machine. So how can we save farms and raise a new generation of farmers without raising food prices? That would be my magic wand. Let's just make everything 10x more expensive. Hey, everybody, all the kids will want to farm again. That'll be easy. Of course, the rest of civilization will collapse. We kind of learned that at the turn of the century. There was a big rush to organics when I was a young man. But it turns out that, you know, people will pinch where they can. They just can't pay for it. So what do? We hustle, we innovate, and we adapt, as farm kids know. Thankfully, off-farm work is an option for most folks, but it's really a symptom of a dysfunctional agricultural economy when, you know, a huge percentage of our farmers have to work off the farm just to stay afloat. Somebody's got to take that job. Agritourism's been a big success story, though, growing double digits, way above the rate of economic growth, over $1 billion now. Harder game to play, but you can do it. Bring folks to the farm. You can also go farm to table. Direct sales, also explosive growth, and you know, farm to schools has been a big growth channel, very important for farmers because again, you can get more of that farm dollar instead of less than 20 cents, maybe 80 cents, maybe 90 cents. Quickly, it does depend on what you buy, right? So farmers are getting about 37 cents, 37% of that dollar, that farm dollar for field grown tomatoes. But strawberries, I like strawberries. They're getting about half of that farm dollar. The problem is another problem pinching farmers is expenses. So the price of corn is about what it was when I was born in 1980 today, but the price of everything else has gone up. And I think we're all reading about this. It's been a problem most of our lives. Labor, fertilizer, fuel, everything's going up. Farms have gotten bigger, less farmers, but farm services have exploded. That's part of that productivity revolution. And you can see it here. It's big business, but it costs money. Electricity, again, it depends on exactly what your business is, but we are using a lot of electricity on the farm, especially a lot of folks there in Virginia. We do a lot of poultry in Virginia. And this is a little out of date, but I wanted to stick with USDA data, and the proportions mostly hold true, just showing that we have a very energy intensive food system, particularly electricity. And when electricity and energy prices go up, it has rippling effects. So here's our question again. How can we revitalize rural America, raise a new generation of farmers without raising food prices and without getting pinched by energy prices? That's an even harder problem. Well, let's put it all together. Let's see if we can stack our problems on top of our opportunities and discover new synergies. Because farming communities, they need investment capital, they have land, and they can expand their agriculture. There's some agriculture happening in most counties in the United States. And it turns out solar developers, they have a lot of capital to invest, a tsunami of capital, but they need land. And they could enable agriculture instead of making the old land use trade-off if we can do solar and farming at the same time. And that's how farming can maybe save solar from NIMBYism and other things, because it's not just conspiracy theories about climate change. People or Chinese solar is a Chinese conspiracy. People don't like seeing forests get cut down or farmland lost, even if it's not theirs. Well, what if we can do solar development without making these trade-offs? That's what agrivoltaics is all about. It's agriculture and photovoltaics together. We're finally getting to the end now. This is part of our new recipe. Oh, in the time I have left, it's leveraging the power of the shade under the panels to reduce evapotranspiration and do all kinds of other things. Think of it like an open air greenhouse. We can just build our solar a little bit differently and do all kinds of things. We can do solar greenhouses straight up, but we can do solar fences. We can raise them up and do large livestock. We can just do conservation, what they call ecovoltaics, and I'll get into that. But again, instead of the either or, we can do both and. And shout out Fraunhofer Institute in Germany, which first came up with this crazy idea in 1982 and figured out that you can do potatoes under the solar panels, take just a little bit of less electricity, and the potatoes actually did a little bit better. So almost like a doubling the harvest. Breakthrough American results were out at Biosphere 2, actually, where they figured out that you could triple the peppers using half the water. You could double tomato yields under the panels using 30% less water out there in the dry lands of Arizona. And the jalapenos just kind of hung in there. So you can grow things under solar panels. Here's some more of those detailed results. You can find the work of Professor Greg Barron-Gafford, published in Nature Sustainability back in 2019. Again, simple system. You can see it on the right there, biosphere in the background, but tremendous agricultural value add. And by the way, it kept the panels cooler. Vegetation underneath better than gravel. And of course, cooler panels produce more electricity. So real functional symbiosity. What about conservation? It turns out solar is paying to restore a lot of prairie land in the Midwest and beyond. Argonne National Labs was out with this 5-year study where you can see they tripled the insect count after 5 years, and the native bee population was plus 20x. If you plant the right things, they will come. Think about them like bee and butterfly oases. So throwing shade is solar energy's new superpower. I just love this headline from Bloomberg a few years ago. This is matcha and mustard greens in Japan, which is the furthest ahead. They have thousands of these now, mostly at a small scale, but farmers all over the world are figuring out how to adapt this new generation of on-farm infrastructure. Again, it's called agrovoltaics, and it's as simple as agricultural production plus solar power production without making a different set of compromises. Also known as dual use solar, and I will read some of these slides now. A multifunctional development model able to leverage land development for solar energy to the benefit of agribusiness, local food systems, and enable economic development. So we're doubling the harvest during the electricity gold rush, running right through. You can just build your panels differently, semi-transparent panels. All this is kind of coming soon, coming next. Trackers are a big part of what's unlocking these incredible agricultural gains, which I'm going to get into a little bit more. You can smooth out the shade. They didn't do that at Biosphere 2, so we can really start optimizing for specific crops. We can also go off grid if we're talking about food, water, power. We can solve a lot of problems for communities no matter where they are all around the world, rural America or otherwise. Let's get into my favorite study. I love wine. I might have wine in my cup. That's why I'm getting so excited as the call goes on. I won't tell you what it is. Tresseret, France. They did a solar trellis over this vineyard. Guess what? The Chardonnay loved it. Plus 60% yield. There it is. Versus the control. Guess what? There was a bad frost. If you're in fruits and veggies, you need very good microclimate. A frost at the wrong time will wipe you out. That's what happened this past year to the control plot. But the panels kept the vines a little bit warmer. And again, reduced irrigation, just like in Arizona, and cooling in the summer. So functioning very much like an open air greenhouse. I'll speed up now, a little whirlwind tour, but under plastic polytunnels here in the Netherlands, minus 10 degrees in the summer. They're doing raspberries, Baywa. That's what it looks like. And again, you might be doing your plastic polytunnels every 2, 3, 4 years anyway. So why not just glass up more permanent infrastructure that you don't have to replace and performs the same function. In Italy now, if you want to do greenfield solar development, you have to do agrivoltaics. Italy's warming up. This incredible project in southern Italy is bringing back some ancient fruit under the panels. I'll leave you to find that like breadcrumbs. Big time asparagus in France. They're doing those tomatoes in Israel, which has a climate very similar to Arizona. Dan, what about full sun plants? What about corn? Yes, you can increase corn yields under solar panels. They just did in Africa. The cobs were a little bit smaller. Ooh, here's the study. You can find it. But the survivability was higher. So net, we increased corn yields under panels in Africa. Pumpkins in Taiwan. They raised them up 30 feet over the hops in Germany. And this is a really big one, potatoes and chickpeas. They can go between the rows. There's some beautiful solar fences. Wheat in Germany with that's a big John Deere tractor. Wow. You can find more solar projects in Europe at this map. I'm going to fly. Let's look at China just really quick, get a couple bonus minutes. China's mostly a desert. Precious little fresh water. 6% of the world's fresh water, China, mostly polluted. You might have seen they've been planting a lot of trees that have been dying. There's mini Dust Bowl. Their Great Green Wall has kind of failed, but guess what? They're terraforming their deserts with a combination of solar and sand locking technologies and trees. And they very proudly announced earlier this year, they've ring fenced the second largest desert in the world. There you can see it, the Taklamakan Desert. This is just some marketing material. You can dig into that. Let's look at the largest agrivoltaics facility in the world in Western China in the desert. They're doing goji berries at a huge scale, a gigawatt of goji berries. And this is official state policy. This is CCP policy now, leveraging solar to combat the deserts. Xi Jinping, out of his own mouth, this is the last 5-year plan, calling for large-scale solar development, what they call their sand plus solar anti-desertification method. China will continue to promote the adjustment of industrial structure and energy structure vigorously to develop renewable energy and accelerate the planning and construction of large-scale wind and solar projects in desert areas. I'm going to speed up even faster. Let's just look at some of this. They're bringing sheep herders back to a desertifying Western China. Some satellite imagery. There's 2013, 2018. They have covered this valley floor and brought the sheep back. There they are, happy herders. Very similar to results in Australia, where they take sheep very seriously. Calmer sheep make better fleece. Consistent with results in Minnesota, you can find this study keeping cows cooler during the hot summer days. There is the research paper from China. There's that valley that I showed before. You can find the results, just demonstrating the positive ecological effects. And so the latest news in China is they're going huge on this. This is the next 5-year plan, 253 gigawatts of anti-desertification agrivoltaics. So that's 1.6 million acres going under the panels with a purpose to combat desertification in China, because it works. Let me get one more minute and I'll just flash, not to be left behind in the United States. It is happening. Go to the agrivoltaics map there, the Inspire wiki map, and you can find 65,000 plus acres of this happening in the United States. Mostly bees, mostly those pollinator oases, but sheep in Virginia. Black Bear Solar Project from Dominion Energy. They've got apiaries under solar panels in Virginia. Sweet corn in Massachusetts. Some awesome farm, Sunrays Foods. This is one of our first movers. There's a farm without an electric bill. What about that? Huge sheep herd in Georgia, which I'll skip. And then Jack's Solar Garden. Make sure you Google this, Longmont, Colorado. This is the largest research solar farm in the United States, doing more than just farming. Some of those other things, it's getting folks on the farm. He's brought in the researchers. Not everybody can follow this model, but Virginia is. They're in Aldi, and the Piedmont Environmental Council has kind of a Jack Solar Garden of the East that's broken ground. They're having their ribbon cutting just in a couple weeks. Very much a demonstration project. And again, I'll stop, but it's this proactive, the possibility of taking solar on the offense, almost proactive development to match up this solar development land rush with the electricity gold rush, to make solar do more, to make solar do all these other things, even if it's just conservation or what we like to call food shed development. So maybe there is a farmer on the edge of town and we can figure out that in advance and then go to the market instead of solar developers bum rushing our communities. We can identify our own rural problems, match them to the solar projects we would like to see in our communities, give ourselves maybe an opportunity to get some of the infrastructure. Fire trucks are nice, new computers at the school are nice, but what if we need a shared use kitchen to help some of our local food entrepreneurs take the next level? Or get the young kids, interested in winemaking, whatever it might be in our particular community. That's it. If you're curious about agrivoltaics, solarfarmsummit.com, we've got a kind of nexus of all these different stakeholders and players. We can do it. We can double the harvest with agrivoltaics. The future is bright. Thanks for the extra time. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. That was a tour of pretty much the planet since the beginning of civilization. So we have a number of questions. One person asked about why is the clean energy revolution happening in Virginia when it is happening everywhere else? Wind, solar, and battery storage now cheaper than fossil fuels.
It's a great question, and I'm hesitant to speak on behalf of the entire Commonwealth because folks have their own opinions and communities, right, and counties, and I do think that these should be local decisions. But I think what's happened in Virginia at the forefront is there was a big land rush. Hundreds of years of this in the United States. This is not the first real estate land rush that we've seen, and solar developers go fast. It's very scary. I think there's a lot of anxiety just about change in general, and a solar meeting is something that you can show up to. And we've also had some project failures. Some solar developers cut some corners. There was some erosion control failures, some floods. And then there's just been good projects. We've had historic rainfall in Virginia. And if you make a mistake or an oversight on some of these large scale projects, Mother Earth will punish you. And so there's good and bad reasons. There's also just a lot of astroturf. People think that solar panels cause heavy metal contamination in the soil and other things that are not true. But I'll stop. Virginia, somebody early on, 5 or 6 years ago, somebody promised a farmer they could do agrivoltaics, but then when they got site control, they actually stripped the soil from the site. And that farmer had a bad lawyer, and they didn't read the contract close enough, but it was the old bait and switch. That was Virginia's introduction to agrivoltaics. And folks down home don't forget. And once bitten, twice shy. So now we're seeing basically some of these amazing solar grazing projects getting rejected about one a month because communities just don't believe it. So we're digging in a hole a little bit in Virginia in particular.
What can we do to help shift that dynamic?
Well, we're trying with the Virginia Solar Summit and elevating these best practices. The state is actually very active. Legislators on both sides. We passed something called HB 206. And like a lot of states, we're trying to figure out what that site selection recipe should be. What is the right way to do solar? Where should we put it? What is the decision-making process? And there's lots of folks working on it, like American Farmland Trust, for example. They have a whole policy called Smart Solar, and you can find that on their website. So that, yeah, no one answer, unfortunately. It's complicated. I think I punished you guys tonight over 150 slides. You kind of have to click a lot of things into place to understand, like, wow, how much of a slam dunk some of this is. You see what China's doing, and you're like, wow, we really need to make this happen. It works. But folks got to work and get the kids to school, and we don't have time sometimes to chew on all the details.
Yeah, back to the astroturf question for a moment. Has anyone explored how much money fossil fuel developers are putting into NIMBY groups?
Well, I bet, but as a retired attorney, some of that money is just impossible to find. It's dark money, and even if we tried to total it up, we probably couldn't. It's a lot. It's a lot, to be sure.
Yeah. Some questions about nuclear energy. One was, do the new small modular nuclear fission reactors produce less waste than the older nuclear reactors?
Actually, I'm not a nuclear expert, but I hang out with some, and Dominion Energy is very high. And I think actually it's net the same. It's less fuel and less waste, but like pound for pound, as we would say in boxing, I boxed a little bit. It's pretty much the same.
Also, a question about nuclear fusion. At this point in time, what does it appear to be the earliest date that nuclear fusion will be producing energy at scale?
So Commonwealth fusion is very far ahead in Virginia. I think just this week or last week they got took another step in permitting their huge fusion facility. I think their timeline again is the 2030s um, at the earliest. And if there's delays, we'll be talking about the mid 2030s. So what I'm expecting to see a facility or two or three in the next 5 years, but we're 10 years away from starting to see the industry really, start to build these things regularly and consistently, and maybe more because there's still a lot of questions to answer about the long-term costs. How quickly do these reactors burn out? But continue to see tests. I am an agnostic guy. I think I think we'll be doing solar for the agriculture, even after we invent fusion in 2075, because they work like greenhouses or as anti-desertification methods. But I do see a bright future for fusion. If we're going to Star Trek or the Jetsons,
Mhm,
we're probably going to need it.
mhm. Just imagining agrivoltaics in Virginia. If things go really well, what are we going to be raising under or around those panels?
Well, sheep make all kinds of sense. Cattle is coming next. I can't. I've heard rumors of some imminent cattle voltaics projects um, in Virginia, and cattle is the number one ag use. So we're grazing. If you count up uses corn versus soybeans versus anything else, cows are number one. So I expect a lot of that in the future. But I showed the wine. Virginia has a surprising amount of wine country, and we're seeing real value add. The microclimates under the panels just deliver performance in the field unlike anything else. The regular old wine magazines are starting to sniff it out. The Italians and the French are really leading the way. I didn't include this, but you can find some great research and articles about the trailblazers in Italy who have done solar wine, and they're selling it at top shelf prices because it makes better wine. So I didn't. I think I skipped that. I was going too fast. Even the study I showed in the Tresseret, France, the Chardonnay was plus 60% in yield, but it wasn't just more junky grapes. They were better quality grapes for winemaking. And I think that's what we'll see first. Grazing is great and we can scale that. But once the pilot projects are kind of over, we're figuring out, wow, berries, grapes, some veggies really perform well. We'll start to see those higher value segments start to kind of go one by one.
So, what do you think is going to be the impact of the uncertainty caused by the current administration on the speed of agrivoltaics rolling out?
Definitely taking a hit. Money flows like water, and if things get harder or more expensive, it goes the other way or takes a break. But shifting beyond the immediate impact, because of some of the dynamics in electricity prices that I mentioned earlier, it seems like electricity prices have nowhere to go but up. In an electricity gold rush, maybe the worst thing to do would be stop building, which is kind of what we've done. Prices are already going up. Those I showed Dominion Energy raising the base rate. We're seeing electricity prices go up already all across the country, and that's based on today. That's almost backwards looking. So as these data centers come online, as energy demand continues to increase, we're going to see upward pressure on prices and even natural gas. So I kind of didn't put an exclamation point on that, but I don't think that US natural gas prices will necessarily triple overnight and catch up to those Asian markets. But the more we export, Economics 101 says we should reach price equilibrium. We've bet it all on natural gas, or Virginia's bet 55% of its production on natural gas. And what if global natural gas prices rise? So long-winded answer to say we're going to need every electron we can get. The only question is who pays? So if the electricity, we just lost, the BBB took away 30% tax credit for solar, right? Well, how quickly are electricity prices going to go up by 30%? And then we're right back where we were. So if you've got an egg timer, you might be able to count it. I just don't think it's going to take very long at all. I work with a lot of investors, and I can tell you, look at Meta, look at Google. They're not slowing down. They're going to build their own electrons. Microgrids are going to do as much as they can on site, because it just makes sense from a insulation perspective. On site electricity is electricity, inflation, insulation. You need to be able to hedge. And if you're not producing your own electrons, you're going to have to get them from somebody else. And that's why I'm so hopeful for agrovoltaics. Some states like New Jersey, Massachusetts, they have very prescriptive agrovoltaics policy, or they're starting to experiment, because farmers need to become part of the solution. If they are not harvesting electrons for us, they're going to be paying higher bills just like the rest of us. And they can ill afford it with the agricultural crisis. So from my strategic sense, I don't see why we wouldn't do this. We have to do it because farmers are about to get run over, and electricity is the only thing they can harvest and therefore hedge.
It makes sense to me. We're talking about China. China's a huge LNG importer, but they're also doing a huge amount of agrivoltaics. And how do those pieces fit together in your mind?
Oh, I got a whole nother 150 slides I could punish y'all with on that. Very long supply chains. They're getting more oil from the Middle East than anyone else now. Um, they're the largest LNG importer, crude oil importer. 80% of China's energy today is coming from somewhere else. And so for them, it's short term, it's a bridge. They don't want to, just like farmers never want to get an electric tractor and never buy diesel again, never fill up your tank again. China, it wants to avoid the US mistake of getting bogged down in the Middle East and long supply chains, to secure stable oil prices. They're doing both. They're taking the cheap oil and gas today, but they are covering their deserts, for the solar all the electricity that they'll need for tomorrow. So,
Well, we have more questions than you're going to have time to answer, which isn't surprising considering how much has been covered. But just for one last thing before the action party, is there any specific advocacy our members should focus on in their local communities to support solar or to support agrivoltaics?
yeah, well, research, there's a lot to it, but I would say please show up at your local meeting, even if it is just to ask questions, because a lot of folks are just saying no. And there are things that need to be fixed with solar development. We don't want to be taken advantage of by investors from somewhere else. We don't want them to cut corners. We don't want them to destroy our soil if we can avoid it. But when I go to a lot of these local meetings, folks don't really know what the alternative is. So this is new. Folks don't know. It's a $50 word, agrovoltaics. And we need to just start showing up and asking these questions like, well, hey, have you all thought about agrovoltaics? Or that's kind of a crappy, the farmer might say, well, these are my worst acres. Well, how about we just do conservation plantings, and it'll function just like the CRP from NRCS. We put 30, 40 million acres in conservation every year. We pay farmers to plant cover crops. And that can be enough too. But folks don't even know to raise their hand and say, hey, maybe we can make solar do more. We can make solar, work for our communities. Because I just hate to see, as a rural kid, some of these solar farms, the day they turn on, they become the biggest tax contributor in the county. If you say no to that, what are we going to wait for? For some counties, it's been since the trains came in 100 years ago. We've seen investment at this scale. And if we say no to the solar tsunami, what is next? Anything? So if we can just do better and adapt the solar investment to the needs of our community, it really is win-win. It sounds too good to be true. A lot of hard work to get there, but show up and start asking the questions. Demanding more of your local leaders and solar developers. Yeah.
That's great advice. Thank you so much for your insights and your contributions and for joining us tonight. We will be sending a follow-up email with all the information shared this evening, and along with the recording of the call within about 24 hours. Now, we hope all of you will stay on with us for our 15-minute action party. with actions you can take from your phone, your computer, or your laptop. So I'll turn this over to Liz and Kaylee to tell us how to get started.
Thanks so much, Francis. And Dan, it was great to catch the end of this talk. It seems fascinating. We've got a good amount of actions in our carousel today that line up quite nicely with what Dan was talking about. We've gotten agrivoltaics action in there, as well as a bunch of other actions about the innovative uses of solar, such as solar functioning as songbird nurseries and working well for grazing. So lots of good gems in there based on what Dan was sharing today. If you haven't heard from us before, I'm Liz Bridgewater, the Director of Outreach at Climate Action Now, here with my counterpart, Kaylee Beam, the Director of Content at Climate Action Now. Climate Action Now makes it easy to send well-researched, personalized messages to lots of different decision makers in the US using our US-based app. So we're excited to be here today, as usual, and take action with you guys at the end of this event. I'm going to pass it over to Kaylee now so she can get you started with taking action.
Hi, everybody. Like Liz said, I'm the Director of Content at Climate Action Now. And as always, thank you so much for having us on. We look forward to these calls every month and love being here, curating actions on your topic of the month. So thanks so much for having us. I'm going to share my screen so we can get started. And you should be seeing it now. So you've probably seen this before, maybe it's your first time, but we like to call this our goal tracker. On the left, we have this illustration of, not illustration, we have this image of a globe, which will iterate and fill in as we take action here tonight. And on the right side, we have this QR code, which is what you're going to scan to access tonight's campaign. So feel free to grab your phones or tablets, open up that camera app, and point it at the QR code box on the right side of the screen, under where it says current action. As you're pointing your camera at the QR code, a little bubble that says Climate Action Now should appear. Once it does, just tap on it. Now, if you don't have the app already, tapping that pop-up will take you to the App Store where you can download it for free. And once you have the app, it will give you a couple prompts you need to follow to sign up. But once you complete those steps, it'll take you directly to tonight's campaign. And if that's not working for you, don't worry, there are a couple other alternatives you can try. You can go to your phone browser, type in the link that's directly under the QR code where it says CanApp link/energy abundance. You can also find tonight's campaign under the Other section of the Campaigns tab if you prefer to access campaigns that way. And if you don't want another app, you prefer not to get on it altogether, we totally understand. We will be dropping links in the chat that you can use to take action on the Climate Action Now website. So like Liz said, we have a bunch of actions focused on clean energy and advocating for energy abundance. We have a few on agrovoltaics, some on floating solar, and other innovative solutions. So let's work hard to make it to our goal of 100. We can definitely do it. Thanks, everybody.
If you all want to take a peek in the chat, the first link there is available for anyone who doesn't want to use their phones. You can just use your laptop, your desktop computer, and get started with the energy abundance topic of actions for the night. I'll continue. If you want to keep paying attention to the chat, there'll be individual actions. Oh, Kaylee, how many? Maybe 6 or 7 of them tonight?
I think it's 7 tonight, but
Okay.
let me double check really quick.
Yeah, I'll get those posted while we're giving people time to work on their actions.
Yep, looks like it's 7 this time. So should be just enough to fill the 15-minute action party period.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're interested in discussing any of these specifics as I drop them, feel free. My multitasking can be challenging, so I'm going to focus on dropping the chat link.
Thanks so much, Paloma. And I also wanted to say, if you all wanted to continue the Q&A, Liz and I are totally okay with that if there were more questions and the speaker's opening to answering them. So totally flexible here.
Yeah, I'm here for bonus time, and I love one of your questions about floating solar, which I didn't really mention, but just makes all the sense in the world. If we're talking about water conservation technology, we got all these canals everywhere. California, I think, just did its first one. India's looking at it. And China, I really do have a whole deck on China. They have a lot of floating solar, and they have figured out that just like the corn, the young corn survivability is higher. fish hatcheries. The young baby fish survive at much higher rates in the shade under solar panels. So too much sun really is a bad thing. And it's really amazing how we're going to leverage shade under glass, very simple technology to just do all kinds of amazing things. So yeah, photovoltaics is a real thing.
I love how many fun words you can make with voltaics as the at the tail end of it. Great work. We're already almost a quarter of the way there.
Nice. It looks like there's a couple questions. Mark and Alice has a hand raised. Do you want to? I'm not sure if you're able to come off mute. Or maybe typing it in the Q&A. Francis, what do you think is a better solution?
Well, Mark and Alice put a comment in the chat, and I'm not sure if this is
Okay.
what they're getting at now or not, but not the chat, but the Q&A. In the Q&A, they said there are many examples of nuclear energy that have safety and environmental faults, but also many good examples, such as in Calvert County, Maryland.
Yeah, I think more of a comment than a question, which I'll accept. I think for me as a kind of general technologist, it's amazing that most of the nuclear power that's in production today were designed by our grandparents. I mean, this stuff's been around for a long time. Been extended for 10, 15 years more, beyond their original design life. And actual, like today, nuclear designs are multiple generations ahead. So we can do it safer and better. There's just no doubt about it. We're going to do it in space, if nothing else. But as an old Trekkie, and saw the Jetsons, I mean, I really think we're going to need almost infinite energy, or might as well just start thinking about it that way. So yeah, solar is going to be great, and wind and batteries, we really are just going to need it all, and we don't really know what the future will hold. So let's just try everything.
Dan, I have a quick question, if I could play devil's advocate for a second.
Please.
I've had a couple of experiences recently where people talk about, I don't know if this is a misconception, but that the glare, the glass, is not a good situation for pilots. Can you address that?
I would like to see that study.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any in-flight impacts from poorly placed solar panels. And I'm not sure. I would like to see the relative analysis, the relative quantitative analysis on how that compares to other glare in the natural environment. Being a frequent flyer myself, there's a lot of water out there. So I have not heard that.
Great. Thank you.
One other question that came up is natural gas is mostly methane, and how can we support so much use of methane?
Well, we might not have, and maybe we shouldn't. Methane traps a lot more heat in the atmosphere, something like 70 or 80x more than carbon dioxide. But we just drug our feet on these other technologies. And when oil ran to $150 a barrel intraday right before the Great Recession, the big energy scramble, my friends were dying in Iraq, blood for oil. It was kind of a whatever we could get situation. So really wish we hadn't slowed down solar investment. Unfortunately, right after I was born, Ronald Reagan got in the White House and ripped the solar panels that Jimmy Carter put up. That turned out to be a bad move at the time. It's like, solar's never going to pencil. It's totally unfeasible. Why should we invest in this technology? Let's build the Alaska pipeline. Great. But now we know you were wrong. And we know for sure you really just cost us like 15 or 20 years of potential research. And so when those energy dynamics in the last cycle were manifesting, wouldn't it be great if we had solar prices today back in 2005? Then maybe fracking might not have been as important. But I will say, not to play devil's advocate, but a lot of our friends in defense and in geopolitics are quite glad, quite happy that we've taken Russia's only game away from them, basically. And it took a lot more carbon, took one last carbon boom to do it. But I can't imagine where Vladimir Putin would be the strength of his hand if they still had a grip on global natural gas supplies like they have for most of the last 100 years. So got to play the ball as it bounces, and hopefully Boom Pickens will be right, and natural gas is just going to prove to be a bridge fuel that held off Mad Max and explosive energy inflation that might have crippled the whole economy. And solar, wind, and batteries, and maybe next generation nukes, and then hopefully fusion will all come online, and it's just going to kind of fade to oblivion. Fingers crossed. Seems to be, though. Like, if I don't hope I convince you tonight. I mean, wow, look at the trends. I mean, we're getting closer every year. So as long as Mad Max, the world doesn't fall apart, we don't get hit by an asteroid, it seems pretty inevitable. Just a question of timing and prices. And I'll just can I preach? Go ahead. Question?
Someone commented in the chat or in the Q&A, as a pilot, I would say water, car windshields, and glass buildings have more glare.
Yeah.
And another comment someone asked me to read is regarding nuclear, actually, the devil is in the details.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
So, someone was asking about, has anybody put together graphically some way you can, they are tracking both national and global growth in electric demand versus the growth in renewables so that we could get a visual of what that's like? Have you?
Yeah, I think the IEA, the International Energy Agency, probably has some of that you could find. Some global dashboards. And I'll just to jump back on, I was going to build on the nuclear point that nuclear is great and might power the robot armies of the future, the flying car fleets, but it's not going to add 60% yield to those Chardonnay grapes. It's not going to stop the deserts in their tracks. It's not going to conserve half or more of the water. It is not the microclimatic adaptation that the world needs, a hotter and more crowded, more hungry planet. Every couple months in the New York Times, I read some ridiculous article about somebody wanting to dust the high Earth atmosphere, solar geoengineering, they call it. Sure, let's dust the whole planet. That seems pretty crazy to me. It's a complex system, and as I understand it, once we dump those shiny materials in orbit, we can't get them out for 100 years. So why don't we just put microclimates right where we need it? Communities on the margin, desertifying countries and nations. We need the solar power anyway, and we can really stack these benefits and knock out our problems along the way. It just makes all the sense in the world to me. And thankfully, it's beginning to scale.
So shall I talk now? Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Okay, so I wanted to say on nuclear fusion, the devil's in the details. At Calvert County, we had it for a couple of decades, and none of the faults that they find elsewhere occur there. And it's important that researchers study it and see what they did right. And they've done that, and they found out they didn't make the same mistakes made elsewhere. So ultimately, we could include nuclear fusion among many other types of better energy, but you have to look at the details. Researchers have to look at it and see how they did it right, and then make that the norm.
Thank you, Mark. Hey, Kaylee and Liz, we're really right on time here to wrap up. Do you want to give us a summary of how we're doing with our actions?
Yeah, so I don't know, hopefully you can still see my screen. We're at 87 actions, so right there, very close to our goal. And I know what always happens after these calls is people keep taking action even after we hang up. So even if we didn't hit it right in this moment, the conversation was great. I love getting to catch just the tail end of the Q&A. So just keep taking action, folks. You're gonna hit 100 in the next few minutes, even if we hop off.
Yes, 92. Yeah. Look at that. 93.
93. It's still climbing even as we're talking here.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Yeah. So no doubt we're going to reach our goal for the night.
Mhm,
And certainly multiple goals because wow, we learned a lot.
mhm.
Dan, we can't thank you enough. Really, it was a just jam-packed hour and 15 minutes of growth and learning and forward thinking. So we appreciate you so very much. But I want to let Francis close us out.
So, well, thank you so much to everyone for coming. You're going to be getting many, many links tomorrow in email, plus other good information. And we appreciate so much you coming and staying for the action party. And we hope to see you next month and on other Elders Climate Action events. So thank you so much for coming. And thanks again to Dan and to Kaylee and Liz.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all. Keep up the great work. We know what to do.
Thank you so much, everyone. Whoever takes the next action will bring us to 100. So if that's you, you should pat yourself on the back. Oh, hey, we
Yes.
did it.
There it is. Awesome.
Perfect timing.
So cool.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Future is bright.